This is Lolly Daskal, and I'm the founder and CEO of Lead From Within. I am a coach who's been around for 30 years, and I've been coaching leaders around the world. I've been coaching entrepreneurs and startups. I have a new book coming out, and it's called The Leadership Gap: What Gets Between You and Your Greatness, and it's available for pre-order. On today, Dove Barron's Leadership Loyalty podcast, I am going to reveal what gets between you and your greatness. What keeps you stuck? What keeps you yearning? What keeps you yearning to be the best that you can be? Join us for a great conversation.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dove Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dove Barron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dove Barron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us here on this episode of Dove Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series, where today we're going to look at the consequences that highly driven, overachieving leaders face when they continue to rely on skill sets that always worked for them, but no longer are effective. If you're a new listener, a new viewer to the show, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. If you're a regular, then a big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. We are also honored and grateful to be cited in Inc. magazine, Inc.com, as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. And G&A cited us in the top 10 podcasts for HR pros and managers. Thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. And remember, we always need your help in staying relevant, so please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. Watching and listening to this show, you're a high-level executive, an entrepreneur, a sales leader, or a leader in some capacity. And as a leader, you know that on this show, we are dedicated to going below the surface of what is considered to be the norm in leadership. Right here, we want to understand what it actually takes to be a great leader. What makes great leaders great? Moreover, what is the gap between a good leader and a great leader? And how can we traverse this massive leadership gap? Today, you are in for a treat. On the show, my guest is someone I am honored to call a friend and a leader who I have the highest possible respect for. Lolly Daskal is one of the most sought after executive leadership coaches in the world. Her extensive cross-cultural expertise spans 14 countries, 6 languages, and hundreds of companies. As the founder and CEO of Leader From Within, her proprietary leadership program is engineered to be a catalyst for leaders who want to enhance performance and make meaningful difference in their companies, their lives, and the world. Of her many awards and accolades, Lolly was designated as a top 50 leadership and management expert by Inc. She was named as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire for your next conference. Her writing appears in the Harvard Business Review, Inc.com, Fast Company, Huffington Post, Psychology Today, and way many others. Her work is based on a mix of modern philosophy, science, and nearly 30 years of coaching top executives. Lolly's perspective on leadership continues to break new ground and produce exceptional results. Lolly's proprietary insights are subject of a new book called The Leadership Gap: What Gets Between You and Your Greatness, and it's now available for pre-order. You can simply go to www.theleadershipgapbook.com, theleadershipgapbook.com. We're going to talk more about that book in great deal of depth, but for now, please help me to welcome a leader the Huffington Post named as the most inspiring woman in the world, my dear friend, Lolly Daskal. Woo! The crowd goes wild. Good to have you here, Lolly.
Great to be here.
And I know you're on this whirlwind tour of podcasts because it's like I don't. If you go on Twitter and you put Lolly in there, boom, You're on a new show every 20 minutes. Everybody's putting you out. Everybody's excited for this new book. We're excited for you. How many interviews have you done so far? Do you know?
I have altogether 200 podcasts scheduled, and I've done 189.
Holy moly, that is insane. Well, you are a machine. I've said that many times before. And of course, on top of everything else, you write for many, many outlets. What is it, 12 you said?
I write for many magazines.
Yeah, it's constant, right? So you've done all these interviews. There's a big, big thrill around this book. You and I have some similarities in the way that we come at leadership, particularly that we're both big fans of Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell. I remember us sitting and talking about that. In the context of leadership, most leadership experts, for that matter, companies, focus on strategy. They focus on tactics. While you and I tend to go deeper into who a leader is. This book is all about who the leader is. Give us an intro into that piece.
Absolutely. And first of all, before we even begin, what an honor it is to finally be here. This is so exciting. Thank you. It's a real privilege.
I'm honored to have you here. I'm really excited about it.
So the leadership gap, what gets between you and your greatness, is a little bit different because most leadership books and most business books talk about the how, the when, the where, right? And this is about the who. These are their 7 who's, either the 7 who's or the 7 leadership styles that you need to be in order to lead to greatness. But what we have found is, being a student of Jung and Joseph Campbell and Viktor Frankl, we know that within us, we don't only have strengths, but we also have weaknesses. We also have what I call the shadow sides, the gaps. And within these 7 leadership styles, this book talks about the gaps that happen. Sometimes when we want to impact something, when we want to forge forward, there's something that keeps us back. And I talk about the 7 gaps that will keep you back.
So each one of these characteristics, these, if I may use the word archetypes, have a shadow side, of course. And so you're talking about what that shadow is. So we both know that, how do we put this delicately? Oh, I'm usually so delicate. Leaders, there's an egoic side of leadership. And that difficulty is looking at the shadow self and the weakness. I mean, of course, we've got strengths tests and all those kind of things. And I do think that people should play to their strengths. But I don't think we can be ignorant of the shadow or the weak self. Why did you want to bring that forward? Because that, to me, seems like many leaders will go, well, that's very nice, but I'm not looking over there in that shadow. Why did you want to bring that forward?
So what a great question. And I really appreciate that you're asking that question because it's an important question. I believe that in order to be a whole person, you need to have your strengths and your weaknesses. You need to have the light and to have the dark. As we know, how is a shadow created? It's created by the light. Absolutely. And so we need to have both. In order to be a whole person, a person that is purposeful, a person that finds meaning, a person of significance, we need to embrace all of it. Many times people want to talk about only their strengths, right? They only want to talk, this is what I'm good at. But they don't understand in times of stress, in times of being overwhelmed, in times of a great challenge, they're leading from their shadows and they don't even realize it. And so this book is important because we need to understand both. And if you're leading from your gaps, I teach you how to leverage it. Yeah,
I think that's a really important piece because one of the things that, there's a term in psychology, I'm sure you're familiar with it, which is under stress, we regress. And you're going to fall into that shadow place very quickly. And the problem with it, I actually did a show about this yesterday. The problem with it is once you fall into that place, once you under stress, you regress, there's a very good chance you are not aware of it because you're in it. And what I love about this book is it gives you an opportunity to be a little bit objective while you're not in it and go, oh yeah, that's what I play out. That's the piece. And I think that, we all know that enlightenment starts with awareness. It's not enough to be aware, but it starts with that awareness. And I think that you've really brought that to people, the strengths and the gaps. Walk us through some of those archetypes and some of their shadows, if you will.
So we'll do it at a very high level.
Sure.
But what we want to do is that let's dive into one because I want
Yeah,
people to find themselves.
absolutely.
So think about it this way. It's a rethink system. It's an acronym for the 7 archetypes. So the first one is a rebel, is for rethink. Then we have the explorer. Then we have the truth teller, the hero. We have the inventor. We have the navigator, and we have the knight. Now, what's very important is those archetypes are great.
Yes.
But their virtues that's where the secret is. That's where the greatness lies. So it's very easy to say, I'm a rebel. But what is the rebel's virtue?
Yes.
The rebel's virtue is confidence. The
Right.
rebel's virtue is because if you want to make something significant in the world and you want to make an impact in the world, you have to have confidence. But as we know, many people think confidence comes from standing in front of a mirror and saying, I'm great, I'm the best, I'm wonderful. That's not really confidence. What we have to understand is that confidence comes from your capabilities and your competence equal confidence.
Yes.
So if a rebel really wants to stand in their greatness, they have to know their capabilities, they have to know their competence in order to be confident. But for every single person out there, and I think this touches 99.1% of all individuals who are high achieving, is that the gap is that in times of stress, in times of challenge, in times when we're not our best, what happens is that we have the leadership gap of the imposter who has self-doubt. When we have the imposter show up, we doubt ourselves that we can get the job done. We doubt that we can do what we want to do in the world. And knowing the difference between the rebel and the imposter gives us a choice, Dove. It gives us a choice to ask ourselves, do I want to stand in greatness and be the rebel, or do I want to lead from my gap, which is the imposter? And if we know that we're leading from the imposter, what can we do to leverage it?
This is I love that we started with this one because this is important, because I think that I am not like you, I'm not of the mindset that imposter is negative. I'm not in that mindset at all. For me, it's like, I know I have that. I don't know anybody who thinks that I'm not confident. I'm very confident in what I do. Do I have self-doubt? Of course I do. And do I question myself? Of course I do. But that allows me to refine what it is that I do. It allows me to go back and speak to my friend Lolly and go, hey, this shit's going on, Lolly. What do you think? And get some guidance from people that I love and I trust and have their expertise. And I think that this is part of the problem when people ignore that shadow self. They go, I'm the leader. I'm the rebel. I'm the one taking it. And I can't ask anybody because I've always got to look like that. And that is so deteriorating. It just eats away at you, because then it becomes a silent negative doubt. And if you don't go to that place, then it becomes egoic. That rebel becomes, I'm always the big guy, and never have the courage to have the humbleness, to have the truth of saying, you know what, I'm not so sure. Let me ask, let me get some guidance. And what I love about that imposter side of myself when it pops up, and I did a whole piece on the power of insignificance and why that is important, to feeling the insignificance, because it challenges me to go, okay, I got to be bigger. It challenges me to step in. These are all like, we've got to get people away from just being one and seeing that strength in that shadow. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. There are 2 things that you said were brilliant, and I want to highlight them. Number 1, what we don't own owns us.
Absolutely.
So that's number 1. When you talk about ego, I made an acronym for it 27 years ago that is, ego is edging greatness out.
Yeah.
So if you are in your ego, that's what you do.
Yeah.
You have to own both. And I want to give an illustration that will explain why it's so important. Think of your life as a balloon, and everything in this balloon is filled with your experiences, with your memories, with your relationships, your partnership, your business, and it also has your strengths and it has your weaknesses. If all your weaknesses lived on the left side and all your strengths lived on the right side, and I said to you, okay, let's mask our, weaknesses. Let's hide our weaknesses. And we keep, squishing down on the left-hand side. What happens in the balloon? It just ripples out anyway. So if we think squishing them, if we think we're masking them, if we don't want anybody to see it, what we don't own owns us, and it gets revealed anyway.
And this is the thing that, so people say, well, why do I have these 2 sides of me? And I say, listen, you've had experiences in your life. Everybody has experiences in their life. And some of those, by virtue of whatever they were, you've interpreted them. Not wrongly or rightly, but you've interpreted them. When you interpret something, it becomes labeled as negative or positive. And then what happens is, you move on in your life, and then people say to me, but that's in the past of. And my answer to that is, one of my quotes is, your past is leaking all over your present. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's... And the problem with it is that if you're a leader, the people you lead can see it. And that's why the power of vulnerability is so important. When you step forward and say, listen, I'm feeling not so sure today. I'm feeling like, I know I'm the leader. I know this is my role, but I need a bit of guidance. And you might be the person who is not at the same level as me. You might be the person who I lead, but I can still come to you and say, give me some insight here. And I think that vulnerability allows us to own that shadow that you're talking about. It is so vital. What do you think about stepping forward in vulnerability with the shadow self as well as the strong self?
I think vulnerable is the new strong.
Yeah.
I don't think any leader has all the answers. I don't think all leaders have arrived. We are a work in progress. There'll be times that we're up and there'll be times that we're down. There'll be times that we need to pivot. We need others to help us be who we are. We can work on ourselves. We can have self-awareness, but it takes a partnership. It takes feedback. It takes humility. It takes relationships to say, hey, I want to take myself to the next level, but I'm not sure what to do. What have you done? And learning from each other. That's how we evolve, and that's how we expand.
Yeah, it's just, I think part of the challenge, as I've spoken about many times, is that we as leaders, particularly those of us who are a little older, have grown up in this mentality that as a leader, we are supposed to know everything. We're always supposed to be on, and we can't ask for help. And it's just like, for me, that is so destructive. I know I used to do that. I did that in my 30s, and it was destructive. It made me feel more insecure. It made me had much larger imposter syndrome, and I always felt the pressure to be on. And I the analogy I gave to somebody years ago was that I remember when I was single, and I would always date these women who thought I had a great sense of humor. And then when I was doing my non-negotiable list about what I was looking for in a partner before I met my wife, I had written that down, has to think that I'm funny. And I was like, and I worked on it and went, no, actually, I don't want that. I want somebody who thinks I am funny, but who I find funny too. Because otherwise, I'm always have to be on as a comedian. And I don't want that. I want somebody, my wife is the funniest person I know, but I know that I make her laugh. And it's the same thing in the leadership space, is understanding that, yeah, I want people to respect me as a leader, but I need to respect people as leaders, even if they're not in my role, even if you're the janitor. And this is the piece that I think everybody forgets. It's that drilled in, you've got to be the leader, you've got to know it all, you've got to be up front and always. No. Give us another one of these characters of your 7 archetypes for us to sort of dive in a little bit to, so that people can go, okay, well, I don't see myself as the rebel. What would be another one?
So this one, the truth is that we have all of these in
Of
us.
course.
So the part is, let's talk about the navigator. So the navigator is a very smart individual.
Mm-hmm.
Navigator is someone that people come to for advice. They're very practical. They're very pragmatic. They're extremely smart. They know how to connect dots. They know how to look at things from a level above. And they say, well, this is how things need to go. And because they're so smart, people trust them.
Right.
And people feel empowered by them. But there is a gap, a very distinct gap. The navigator who is trusted by individuals also can come across as the fixer who is arrogant. And the fixer is someone who you go to and you say, I have a problem. And they go, oh, you have a problem? This is what you need to do. Do this. Do it this way. Do it now. I've done it before. I know best. No, don't do it that way. Do it this way. You know how you're always barking commands and telling people what to do? If you are coming across as a fixer, most likely people around you are feeling disempowered by you and find you to be extremely arrogant. So the question that we have, the choice that we have, is at any given moment to ask ourselves, do we want to stand in our greatness, which is the navigator who is trusted, or the gap of the fixer who is arrogant? Knowing this little tweak can save relationships, partnership, leadership, and business.
Yeah, just a little. Yeah, I've been just a smidge. Yeah, exactly. I certainly can recognize that from my early 20s, being that person who did it in business, did it in leadership, and sure as hell did it in relationship. And of course, then who could I date? I would only date women who were completely looking for somebody to fix them. And when I fixed them, what would they do? They'd take off. They'd run away. They didn't need me anymore. And I would go looking for another wounded little thing to fix. And I see that in leadership too. I see that, and it's interesting. I'll tell you where it shows up. It shows up a lot in succession. So some of the people that I work with are multi-generational businesses. And you see that this present leader, whether it's the matriarch or the patriarch of the family, is actually unconsciously sabotaging the next gen by always running in, always fixing, always doing it, always being the person to go to. And then the next gen person feels, they feel disempowered. They don't feel strong enough. And then I look at that leader who's at that place and I say, listen, what's your legacy? And they'll start telling me about all these things, blah, blah, blah. And I say, no, hold on a minute. Based on your leadership, what's your legacy? Because it talks to this shadow piece that you're talking about. And they go, well, what do you mean? I say, when you're gone, what will be the legacy? I said, well, no. I'm going to tell you what you're actually unconsciously thinking. You tell me if I'm right. And they go, okay. And I say, when you're gone, a little bit of you will feel a bit good if it goes downhill a bit, right? And they go, what do you mean? I say, well, because you're so great. You're so marvelous, it can't possibly survive without you. And I said, do you want that legacy? And they go, no. But by speaking it out, by having those words said, they become aware. And this is what this book is doing. It's bringing to the surface that little shadow piece that is there. Because I don't think you and I tell anybody anything they don't know. We don't share anything we don't know. The stuff in this book, you're going to read it, you're going to go, ooh, yeah, I am doing that. Let's stop. Let's go to greatness by stopping the stuff that keeps us average. And that's what's important about this. And that desire to fix, and we all have it because it gives us such, the spotlight goes on, the crowd goes wild. But until you can, the whole thing is about, can you give the light away? And that's the great challenge for us all. We all want it, but can you give it away? And that's a powerful piece to do. And I love that about showing this other side of that navigator, because it's trust, but it becomes arrogance, which now you've got trust for your expertise, but not trust in you as a human being. That's beautiful. That's really, really a powerful thing for you to share. Talk to us about you said in the book that leaders will often reach a point where their effectiveness is compromised by this gap. The intuition becomes manipulation, integrity becomes corruption. Walk us through that understanding, because I think that if we ask people, are they integral, the answer is yes. Everybody's yes. Ask them if they're authentic. Yes. So walk us through the understanding of this distinction where intuition becomes manipulation, where integrity becomes corruption.
So let's take integrity. Let's talk about the inventor. The inventor is an archetype that's about their craft. So how do you do your craft? You do it with integrity. That means everything that you do is with quality and excellence. But there is a gap. And I know we know this is because the inventor who has integrity can be destroyer who is corrupt. And that is the leader that says, let's go faster. Let's go cheaper. Let's cut corners. Let's just do it. They won't know. They won't notice. Nobody will ever tell them. Let's just do it. As we know, it always catches up with us. And we can actually destroy our leadership and we can corrupt our business. And so we have to be very mindful that everything that we do what is right and not what is easy, right? I think that's what integrity is about. Do what is right, not what is easy. And it's very easy to say, let's cut corners and let's go faster and let's do this cheaper. But at the end, it catches up with you. And is it worth it? So in order to stand in your greatness, be that inventor who leads with integrity. Otherwise, you have this gap and it'll be the destroyer who is corrupt.
Can you've so far you've talked about the rebel, you've talked to the navigator, you've talked about the inventor. Can you give us some examples from the world? I mean, you look out into the world of, we're surrounded by leaders in whatever form it is in, whether it's real leadership or not. Give us some examples so we can see this gap and maybe potentially see ourselves in it.
So I'll give you a story from the book, and we can talk as many stories as you want. But one in particular story, I think I called him Richard to protect his identity. And Richard was an amazing, actually, people really know him. He's always written up in the newspapers. He was one of these men that was very, very smart. He was a go-getter. He had a lot of confidence, and he had a very big business, and he sold it for billions of dollars, and he decided to retire. But in retirement, he was bored. He didn't know himself. So what did he do? He put out some feelers and he said, hey, anybody interested? I'll come up and sit on your board of advisors and I'll bring all my knowledge that I have. And people heard, oh, Richard is available. We want him on our board. And so he got a lot of calls, and then he decided to sit on one of the boards where I was coaching the CEO. And the CEO called me and said, Lala, you better come and help. We're falling apart. You have to see what's happening with our board of directors. And I walked in and the meeting started and everybody started to talk. And then I saw the problem. The problem was Richard. What was Richard doing? Richard was in front of that room getting up and acting like he was the only one that knew everything, that had the answers for everything. And when people spoke, he's like, shh, shh. When people wanted to make a suggestion, he's like, no, that's stupid. Or when people wanted to say something, do something, he said, no. When there was a break, I decided to go over to Richard and say, Richard, congratulations that you're out of retirement. You must be so excited to be here. And when I started to ask him a question, he's like, oh, I know that. Oh, I know that. I know that. I know that. And so you couldn't even talk to him. Well, guess what happened? A few months later, they asked Richard to leave. The man who was so used to telling people what to do and how to do it, that instead of being the navigator, which I tried to tell him at the break, stop being the one telling people and just listen, be quiet, learn to navigate. You're coming across as a fixer and arrogant, but he wouldn't listen. So that was his downfall. Actually, they asked him to leave. And it's funny because he hired me then 6 months later to say, what did you want to tell me on the break? I think you wanted to tell me something very important. I said, to sum it up in a sentence, whatever you're doing is costing you in your greatness. So I wanted you to stop. But it turned out I ended up working with him. And now it's very hard to undo a pattern. So we're learning how to leverage more of the navigator instead of the fixer. But in the book itself, I go through so many stories of people that are suffering from the imposter syndrome, how they come across as a destroyer, how they come across as a mercenary that's only self-serving. And what's interesting is that even though the stories are about Fortune 500 CEOs, every single person listening today to this podcast will find themselves on those pages. They will see, oh, Richard is a know-it-all. Richard is a fixer. So am I. You'll learn stories about Michael and Francesca and all these wonderful people that people will be able to resonate and say, this is my life too. Now let me learn to leverage my gaps so I can stand in greatness.
One of the things that I like about what you've done here, and I think is really important, is it's easy to go through these things or even look at the book and go, okay, we've got these 7 archetypes, and first blush to say, oh, I'm clearly one of these. But what I like about what you're sharing here is the truth is you're not one of these. You're all of these. You probably have a dominance. You probably have a dominant way of acting, but you're all of these, and that we all have those gaps. And what I love about it is to say, well, if that's the gap, okay, is that the gap that shows up in my marriage? No, that's the one that shows up in the office. Is that the gap that shows up in the office? No, that's the one that shows up in my home or with my children. Because one of the things I think that is a huge mistake is that we think this is my work person and then that is my private person. No. You're taking yourself to all of them, but you change the role, you change the way you act, and then one of those archetypes is going to become more dominant. And I know that the way that, when I work with leaders, and I find that same thing is like, I'm working with a leader right now. I love him to bits. I mean, he's awesome. He's kind, he's generous, he's incredibly bright. He's built a large organization and done very, very well from scratch, from nothing in the 70s. He's now in his 70s. He's done a phenomenal job. And I look at him and see how kind and caring and compassionate. I can talk to him for like 2 minutes and his eyes well up. It's amazing. But watching him deal with this particular person that is in the organization, and he is an ass. No other word for it. And I've told him, you just behave like a complete ass. And it's so uncharacteristic for the truth of who he is. But like I said, under stress, we regress. And the stress comes up, particularly with this person, and he moves into that gap that you're talking about. And I think that this is vital because we tend to minimize and say, well, most of the time, I'm not like that. Well, that's great. But as you said, how does it rub your greatness when you do step into that? And I'll put my hands up. I'll own that I do that. I'll own that I get in my own way. I'll own that I got to look at what it is. And that's why I journal every day. That's why I read. That's why I want to learn. That's why I have friends who are influential and insightful and all those things. How do we get people to not, because this to me is important. They're going to read this book. It's a fantastic book, and I highly recommend you get The Leadership Gap. You read the book. I really think it's important for you. By the way, again, the book is at www.theleadershipgapbook.com, so make sure you get over there and get it. But how do we get people to do the thing that so few do, which is to read it and apply it? Because you and I both know most people don't read past the first chapter of any book, and God bless them if they get through it, but will you do anything with it? That might be a whole other bag. How do we get them to integrate this, Lolly?
We don't.
Tell us more.
So this is what it is. I always tell my clients that greatness lies within you, but greatness is a choice. We have to want it. We have to be starved for it and parched for it and say, my life isn't working, my marriage is falling apart, my business is not where it needs to be. When there is that void, when there is that gap, we will choose it. We will say, I need something. And this will be the system that will give you the awareness of where to start. I think this system is the foundational work to greatness because we need to know who we need to be. Then read all the other books that will tell you how and the what and the when, even the why. If you have those feelings, most likely you're leading from your gaps. Because when you lead from your greatness, you have a flow. You have a sense of groundedness. You have a sense that anything you can do is impossible, right? Mm-hmm. So we can't tell anybody what to do it. I think there has to be a pain in order for them to say, I need something now. And this is the something. This is the answer to what they're looking for. And people don't know where to get it. This is where you get it.
I thank you for saying that. I think it's really important, and it addresses something that I deeply, deeply believe in, which is that your greatness is not catalyzed by your joy. It's catalyzed by your pain. It's until you get hungry enough, thirsty enough pain that you go, this shit's not working anymore. It was stuff that worked before, sure, but everything works until it doesn't. And I think we have this tendency to want to grab onto something because it worked. And the problem is that most people are leading like it was 20 years ago, and it's just not working anymore. And that slap in the face that says, whether it's the bank account or whether it's great people leaving you or whatever it is that makes you go, I'm the common denominator, right? Otherwise there's just a bookshelf like your own, which is a marvelous bookshelf that's filled with shelf help. It's not self-help. It looks fabulous, but are you reading it? Are you applying it? Are you doing something with it? And that's why I loved your answer. We can't. And it's the great frustration of being somebody like yourself or myself in what we do is that, God, I really wish you would, but I can't make you. And, that old saying, you can lead a horse to water. but it really comes down to what will you do? And your truth is you won't do anything until you feel the pain of what you're doing. And that is a vitally important piece.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it was Joseph Campbell that said, in your abyss, in your pain, that's where you'll find your treasure.
Yeah.
And I think that people think that they'll coast through life and everything will go fine. But guess what happens? There comes a point in their life where they have dis-ease disease.
Yep.
Something will show up and it will be some kind of really horrible thing, God forbid. And then what happens is they have wake-up calls.
Yep.
Why do we have to have the disease, right? Why do we need to get ill to have a wake-up call? No. Rethink what you're doing, become who you are meant to be, and do the work. And the funny thing is that most people say, this is so complicated, this is so hard. It's really not. I have made it so simple for you. Learn the Rethink system, memorize the 7 archetypes, know what their gaps are, and ask yourself at any given moment, greatness or gap, greatness or gap. It's a life changer.
I love that. What is the most practical thing a C-suite leader can do with what it is that you're sharing? What do you think?
They could learn the system. They could learn the language, because there's a language to how every archetype speaks.
Mm-hmm.
Then to internalize who they want to be, to make a conscious choice who they need to be. So let's say a leader is in front of a group of leaders, right? They have their leadership team in front of them. And they can ask themselves, which archetype do I need to be in this meeting? Do I need to be the truth teller? Do I need to be the hero? Do I need to be the rebel? Do I need to be the knight? Because each one of those archetypes come with a virtue.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever those virtues are, that's what they need to show up with. And you could do this every moment, to every meeting, to every circumstance, to every encounter. And at the end of the day, if you've led from your greatness, you could say, I've done something significant today. And if you do this every single day, and you talked about legacy earlier, then you won't be leading from your ego. You won't be edging greatness out. You'll be leading a meaningful, significant, purposeful life.
Yeah, I think it is that a willingness to hold the awareness that is vital. It is vital. Do you think that this, because I know you work with a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds. Do you think that applying this in a sense of application and its impact, do you think it's different for somebody who is, say, a C-suite leader, a CEO, versus somebody who is, say, a high-level or a budding entrepreneur?
Great question, and I'm happy that you asked that, so thank you. Leave it to you to ask all the smart questions. So I've taught this to 18-year-olds, and I've taught this to people in their 60s, and it doesn't matter what gender, it doesn't matter what language, it doesn't matter what country, because when it comes from virtues, right, that is universal. Yes. That's what makes this system so profound. Who doesn't want trust? Who doesn't want confidence? Who doesn't want loyalty? Who doesn't want integrity? This is what makes us human beings in our highest caliber, right? This is why we're here. Yeah. We're not here for the plaque. We're not here for the title. We're not here for the position. And if you're chasing that, P.S., if you're chasing that, there'll come a time when it won't feed you. It won't ignite you. You'll be like, something is missing, and you won't know what it is. Tap into the greatness of these virtues, of these 7 leadership styles, and it'll feed you a whole lifetime.
One of the things we've been speaking about here is that this willingness to not wait for yourself to fall off a mountain like some crazy people do. I can't think of anybody in particular, but not to wait until there's some devastating event, but the willingness to step up and say, yeah, things are okay. Maybe they're even good, but is there another level of greatness to step into that? And it is my belief that truly great leaders are committed to ongoing self-awareness and self-development and development of themselves in their lives and in their business. So let's flip that onto you for a moment. What is a problem or a challenge that you're currently working on in your business?
In my business? So right now, I've been doing what I've been doing for a while, and I have this new book coming out, and I'm wondering, what will this do for the business? how will I, because I've been teaching this for so long and I've been holding this information with one-on-one clients and in workshops. So what will it mean for me? And I haven't yet come up with the roadmap yet. Mm-hmm. I know I want to take myself to the next level. I want to speak on bigger stages and I want to connect on a larger scale. What does it look like? What does it feel like? I'm not sure yet. Mm-hmm. But so for me, there is that idea of still dreaming and thinking about it, but I haven't done the due diligence yet of what it means yet, because I want the opportunities to now go bigger and better, and not faster and cheaper, but bigger and better and greater.
That's good. Not cheaper. That's good.
No, not faster, but this integrity, that excellence, where excellence is my next level.
So even in each of these gaps, again, my thoughts, and I'm sure you and I are on the same page with this, but in each of those gaps, there is what I call a seed of a belief. That there's a belief there in the gap that calls us back to feeling like an imposter, or makes us want to rescue rather than actually helping, or whatever it might be. What was the belief that you had to overcome to reach the level of success that you're presently at?
So that's a great question. Again, a brilliant question. For me, when I was younger, I thought I had to be the smartest and the most perfect in the room. Mm-hmm. And that belief kept me stuck, right? Because there's always somebody smarter and better and wiser than I'll ever be. Even though I read a book, there's someone there that says, oh, I wish I would have said that. They're so smart. So the thing for me is I had to learn very early on, there's no such thing as perfect. And that if I want to be the best, then I'm going to have to come from excellence. It's exactly what I'm struggling with now. So what does excellence mean? It's a better question to ask than to say, what is perfect, right? Because perfect doesn't exist. But what does excellence mean at this level? How does it look? What does it mean? What actions do I have to take? How do I need to show up? What do I need to let go of in order for something new to come in? These are all questions, and it's a process, right? It's not like, okay, this is what I want and it happens. No, I have to decide what it is and then be laser focused on getting what I want. But first I have to define exactly what I want and leave out the perfect and go for excellence. You bring up this word because, and I think we have to sort of jump into it a little bit, which is this thing around perfect, because it's something that a lot of leaders are trying to be. And I see it as so detrimental. And there's what's his name? A French guy who is hired by the top companies in the world for Rappel is his last name, Colvert Rappel, I think it is. And he looks at the meaning of things in a different culture. And so, for instance, one of the things he looks at is this word perfect. And he says it's so dominant in North America, that word. They're looking for the perfect partner, the perfect business, the perfect whatever it is. And he said, and so he deeply investigates the meaning of these things. And it's really interesting because he says, you can reach perfection in the American culture, but here's how you do it. And I actually speak about this piece. And he says, here's how you do it. You die. Because when you're dead, nobody will speak bad about you at the eulogy. Everybody will say wonderful things about you. You get to be immediately, I call it dry cleaned. You get to be, all the dark spots are taken out and they say wonderful things about you. The fact that you were an ass 90% of the time, they'll only talk about the 10% of the time. And it's this, yeah, I'm sure you've not been on this kind of podcast before. But it's that desire for perfect. And the only way you're going to get to it is if you drop dead. So it's really like, if you're not planning on dropping dead, you might want to give that one up. And as you said, the aspiration for excellence also says, I'm never there. I'm always aspiring. I'm always willing to look in the mirror and say, what else is there? I wonder where the next level is. I wonder what that's about. And I think this is a really powerful point. And I'm interested to how you got to that. Because you were driven by that belief that you needed to be perfect, the most perfect person in the room. And you've, like I said, you've had to overcome it. What got you to realize that that's not going to work? It happened. It's funny because that's that story when I said I wanted to be the smartest and the most perfect. And I was like so busy thinking about it that I failed. So when you have a failure on a Monday, you have a failure on a Tuesday, and then you have a failure the next week, and you say, hey, this isn't working. What is not working here? It's not about them. It's not about what he said or she said. It was about you. If you can't be present and show up and do what you need to do, what was the problem? And I kept bumping into this word as perfect. It kept bumping into, I have to be perfect. I have to be perfect. And then one day I said, perfect isn't real. I could never achieve it. And so the moment I gave that up, the moment I let that go was the moment that, what do I need to fill in here now? Because we're always wanting to fill the void up with something. And I had to contemplate, if I get rid of perfect, what am I going to bring in? And I had to bring in something that was about me. And I could always be the best version of me. That's excellent. And I was like, that's what I'm going to go with. And I've stayed with it. And it really works for me. That little change in word, that little mindset shift has been a game changer. So I stopped being so stupid and I woke up.
You've done, you're set up to do 200 interviews. You said you've done how many? 180 what? Was it?
89.
189. My goodness. So, a lot of this, I'm sure you get asked a lot of the same questions a lot of the time. I understand that. What's the one question that no one asks you that you wish they would?
That's a great question. That is a great question. See, the thing about me, it's really interesting because I've been doing this for a while, right? I've been doing these podcasts. And what I want to always know is, how can I serve your audience? What can I do for your audience? And people are like, wow, that's a great question. What do you want to do about yourself? And I go, no, my mission is to serve others. I want to bring value. I want people to have aha moments. I want people to say, oh, she suffers from it. I suffer from it. I want people to say, wow, I suffer from perfect. I'm going to go for excellence. So what is the question? I don't know. But the question that I have for you, Dove, is, am I bringing value to your audience? And is there something that you want to ask that you think is on the mind of your audience? Because then I know for this moment, I'm bringing excellence. So is there something that maybe you've bumped into or that people have written to you about? Because I'd like to talk about that. So ask me anything.
Well, I think and thanks for turning that back on me. Nicely done.
I'm a coach.
I know. And one of the best. So, the thing here is that in that piece around wanting to serve, I totally get that. That's, for me, is what it's all about. But this thing in here where we go, I can never be her. You know what I mean? So I have had this, people come to me, yeah, Dove, but that's true for you. And yeah, or Lolly, it's great. You overcame this perfect thing, but I don't think I can overcome that. You see, it was my dad. He drilled it into me every single day, or it was my mom, or it was that teacher or that coach that I had at school, whatever it was. That is a question that comes up a lot, is like that wanting to compare and say, well, Lolly, of course it's easy for you. You're a superstar. You're one of the top coaches in the world. You're one of the top speakers in the world. You're an author. You're on podcasts. You write for 100 million different outlets. Answer them. Walk them to, why is it not different for them? They think it's different for them. Why is it that you and I and them are actually no different?
Because there's no them and there's no me. It's us. And the thing about that is that I have failures, I have insecurities, I have things that I go through. But the difference is that I make a choice. Yeah. The difference is I'm not on replay about the same story that happened to me last week, last year, or when I was younger. The difference is that I make a choice every single day to choose greatness. And so what makes me maybe different is that I choose greatness. Maybe people are choosing the gaps, but this moment is the moment that they can pivot, and then it could be an us. It's never them and me, it's an us. We together can choose this.
Yeah. One of my quotes is that you don't live in the world, you live in the mirror. And what I mean by that is that I've never worked with a client who isn't me.
Beautiful.
Just,
Right.
I can't see you as not being me, as some reflection of me. And so your insecurity, your failure, your success, whatever it might be, that's a reflection of me. It might be a part of me that I dealt with 30 years ago. It might be a part of me that I'm wrestling with today. And it might be a part of me that I've not got to yet. But, you know, and it might be something I aspire to. But by looking at each other in that way, we remove racism, we remove sexism, we remove all of the isms, and as you said, then it becomes that we are us. We are together in this, whatever it is. I know when you and I have sat down and we talked and we hung out, it was like there was an instant camaraderie around that. In that, I still have enormous respect for you and love for you and caring for you, but I can't see you as better than me. I see you better at certain things. That's different. And I see things that you're wonderful at, but I want to take that as an inspiration. I want to take that as saying, wow, okay, here's another person from this place who's done that. And I think that this is where we get cut short on ourselves. We say, but I'm not like that person. I'm different. And that's the clinging to the gap, what I call defending the wound. You know, you're holding on, you're possessive of your wound. You want to say, but it's different for me because I went through this. Yeah, you did, but it's not different for you because that courage is so important. You know, you talked about Campbell, and he talks about going into the darkest cave where the treasure is, you know, because that place you fear to step into, the void, the darkness, that's where you'll find your greatness. But clinging to the darkness, you will never know the light. And this is so vital for us to grasp, is that you've got to step into that light. But you can't, the light is on the other side of the darkness. Your greatest gift, your greatest treasure will only be revealed when you have the courage to step into the darkness. And the problem with the darkness is your eyes will adjust. So you may be presently living in the darkness, telling yourself it's the light, but it is not your greatness. And I really want you to listen to Lolly when she says, you have to choose greatness. That's key.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you.
I believe leaders, when I say leaders, that's not true. When I believe great leaders, people who are truly successful beyond finances, are obsessive. We all have something we're obsessed with. Some people are, it's in a movie. It's the part of the movie you recall. It's the part of the movie you've got to tell everybody about. There's an article or a book comes out about it. You've got to read it. There's a conversation going on. It seems somewhat inappropriate for this environment, but you just got to jump in. What are you obsessed with?
Reading books. Obsessed. I read a book a day. It's where I feel, it's a belief that I have, is where I can get wisdom, where I can get insight, and how I can expand as a human being. I am obsessed with books. If you want to do the nicest thing for me, you buy me a book.
So you're obviously a speed reader.
You know, it's interesting that you asked me that question. I never viewed myself as a speed reader, but I recently read the audio of my book, The Leadership Gap, What Gets Between You and Your Greatness. And the director kept saying to me, cut, cut, cut. And I was like, what? I'm reading the sentence. I'm reading the paragraph. And she goes, you're leaving out every preposition, every the, every is, every of. What are you doing to the sentence? You're butchering the sentence. And I didn't realize it. Well, because I read a book a day, I'm reading the gist of the sentence. I'm not reading every single word. I never knew that until now.
So you're a self-taught speed reader.
I guess so.
That is fabulous. That is really fabulous. So if you get to put one thing and one thing only on your gravestone, what is it going to be?
One word?
No, not one word. One thing. It can be whatever it is. You know, here lies Lolly, who, what's that one thing?
Loved.
Who loved. I like it. I like it a lot.
I always tell my kids, I am loving, I have loved you, and you are lovable. I always talk it in that form, because it's not only about me, but I think love, everything stems from love.
Yeah,
you can do a Beatles song,
yeah,
right?
I agree with you. And love is just vital. Lolly, it has been an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you on the show. I was really looking forward to it. I'm really glad it's been here. It's fantastic. And this is a word that's normally associated to men, but it's actually not gender specific. But you are, without doubt, a mensch. And I'm really glad to have you on the show. It's been fabulous. Thank you for everything that you've shared. It's been an honor to have you here. Again, please remind our viewers and our listeners where they can find out more about you, not just the book, but you, potentially bringing you in to speak wherever it might be.
So you can find me at lollydaskal.com, and you can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Lolly Daskal that exists under leadership. And again, the book is at theleadershipgapbook.com. Order your book today, and not only for yourself, but for people that you care about and people that you love, and merging leaders, because this is a gift that will give on giving.
Absolutely. So again, thank you. And thank you to you, dear listener and viewer, for tuning in. And again, I say this to you on every show, please don't just listen. Take it in. Go back, watch it, listen to it 2-3 times. I promise you. We talked about ego earlier. I promise you, your ego will have filtered out certain things, particularly the stuff that was really important for you. Go back, listen to it a couple of times, take some notes. I promise you, it will have massive impact. This is a vitally important podcast and show. But also get the book, work with the book, look at yourself and look at where you're choosing the gap, where you're clinging to the gap rather than clinging to your greatness. And I really want to challenge you to do that. Remember, the research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing even the most successful companies is somewhat counterintuitive. The fastest growing companies often hit a point where they realize that they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing talent, but they also have their talent leaving them at an alarming rate. If you're sick of investing in training and development for your talent, only to have them leave before there's a return on your investment, then reach out to us at fullmontyleadership.com. We provide the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization to assist you in reducing employee turnover by as much as 80% in as little as 120 days. Full Monty Leadership, providing you with the concrete soft skills that get you and your organization to the top and keep you there, because you can't outsource authenticity. Also remember to stop by the Matrix and get your Matrix self-assessment for leadership, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. You get it as you can go through all the 5 categories, and you get it absolutely free just for tuning in, and it's a value of $197. So again, go to matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. Until next time, this is Dov Baron, fullmontyleadership.com, and stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how you might want to choose your greatness over your gap. Till next time, this is Dov Baron, and I am out.